The Phillies take 3 of 4 versus the Padres over the weekend. Are our expectations reasonable for this upcoming 2023 Eagles season? And is Pascal Siakam a good fit for the 76ers? That and much, much more when we are back in just 10 seconds. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics Show, live here on DSM-Media's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channel. Guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure to check us out on Twitter first, at DSM_media. Hit that follow button. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. And while you're over on the channel, make sure to check out the link tree in our bio. It will take you to every social media platform we are available on. If you guys want to be interactive here on the show this morning or any of our shows here at DSM, make sure to check out the YouTube channel specifically, the new YouTube channel specifically, which is DSM-Media-Philadelphia. That's where the Phaithful Phanatics Show will be live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as our DSM pregame live. So make sure you hit that subscribe button over on the new YouTube channel. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. I'm one half of your host, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. You can find him as well at Scotty Drown. My man, how was your weekend? And happy Monday.
Happy Monday, man. It was a fun weekend. Got to celebrate my mom's birthday. She came up.
Oh, happy birthday, Mama Scotty.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. I'm sure she will too. Went to the Phillies game on Saturday. That was enjoyable. We went to the late one, stayed out of the sun, which I was happy that we decided to do that as well. Because it was hot as hell on Saturday during the day. But we went out there, and that was probably the best game that you could have gone to this weekend, given the score and how it played out. They pretty much controlled that entire game. So that was a fun weekend. And of course, the Phillies take 3 out of 4. I mean, that's always fun against the Padres, which right now, you played the Padres, in the NLCS last year. Yeah. Obviously, Bryce Harper had that awakening. But nonetheless, the Padres are big right now because of the Juan Soto rumors, obviously him flying back with the Phillies from the All-Star break. So you kind of wanted to get this series against the Padres, not only for those reasons, but because they are in the NL, you want to keep that distance between us and them. But they're going to be a team that's on the brink of selling at the trade deadline. And I think that was a big point of getting this series win for the Phillies, because now you can be one of those trade partners for any of those potential candidates, whether that's pitching or one of their big bats that they have there. So big series win overall. We can obviously get into that, whatever you want to get started here, because there's a lot to talk about, because a lot of guys showed up this weekend. And I'm looking forward to talking about that. And then, of course, the Eagles. Something that sparked my attention over the weekend, I was listening to 97.5, and, they were talking about how the Eagles were so good last year. Are we just, overhyping them to expect them to even reach that point again? So just something to think about there. We'll obviously get into that. But happy to be here, brother. Happy to
man.
Be stride.
Absolutely. But starting here with the Phillies taking 3 of 4 versus San Diego. I mean, this whole weekend was huge. And the way it started to play out, where they kind of get their doors blown off on Friday night and San Diego's bats show up and a couple monstrous home runs. Tatis, I believe Grisham hit one out. It was a horrible start to the weekend. Let's just be honest. And then the way they were able to bounce back, the Phillies hadn't swept a doubleheader. I mean, I forget in how long, man. So that was huge. Yesterday, obviously, you had like the 2-3 hour rain delay. Then you get 12 innings, you get extra baseball, and they come away with a win there. We're going to get into all of it. But my first kind of question to you is, you were down there Saturday night, so you can feel it and explain it better than I could. But this felt like playoff baseball. Like, this felt like playoff atmosphere all weekend long. And I get it, right? It was the NLCS rematch. Regardless if they're below 500, if they're selling at the deadline, the Padres have too much talent. They carry too much weight to feel like a bad opponent. Like, it just feels like it's a star-studded opponent when you go against them. But the announcers, the way Tom McCarthy's energy was, you could hear kind of the crowd noise more from your television this weekend than you could on like a regular series throughout the regular season. It just felt different. Was the atmosphere that much crazier down there on Saturday night?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty strong for you talk about a full day of baseball where there was a doubleheader. You could tell there was a bunch of people that went to both games.
Yeah.
People were trashed in the stands, like throwing. There's this one dude that threw up on himself like twice in
Oh,
front of us. Like
oh,
they were out there all day in that heat, drinking all types of stuff. So I'm sure it was extra fired up. I know our section over in the right field that it was lit as soon as I think it was Harper cranked one first, and then Schwarber cranked one.
yeah.
And it was electric there, man. And to your point, when you're playing the Padres, it's just star power versus star power.
Yep.
That's a team that's underperforming, right? It's not that they're supposed to be where they are. They were in the
Exactly.
NLCS last year with this same exact team. So even though they're underperforming, it's still a big matchup, and it's still one that it feels like Philly fans got up for, and definitely the Phillies got up for. Which you love to see, right? It was electric to see Harper homer, though, right? It's been a while. Coming out of the All-Star break, too, I think there was excitement built around there where, fans wanted to see the Phillies come out very strong out of that All-Star break and make a point to solidify themselves in this playoff run. So these are the right steps forward. You talk about the first weekend after the All-Star break. These are the right steps forward after the break.
Well, it's funny because I texted you on Saturday afternoon when they went down early in that first game of the doubleheader after they had lost badly on Friday night. Obviously, they lost 2 of 3 versus Miami, and this is all following the sweep in Tampa Bay, right? And we're texting back and forth, and I'm like, man, where did that Tampa team go? Like that team heading into the All-Star break had so much life and energy, and you thought they were starting to turn it on. And then all of a sudden they lose 3 of 4 and they look uninspired. Trey Turner with errors in the field. Castellanos and Trey swinging at balls before they're hitting the dirt before the home plate. It was a mess. And then all of a sudden something clicked, right? And it starts. So let's get into it. It starts up front. It starts with the top end guys because Trey Turner over the course of the last 3 games stepped up at the plate. Trey Turner stepped up in the field, obviously had basically a game-changing diving catch at shortstop yesterday in extra innings. Early on in the game, he made a diving stop, I think, against Manny Machado and threw him out from left field. So he stepped up. Kyle Schwarber has homered for the first time in his short Phillies tenure for 3 games in a row. Bryce Harper ends the home run drought, but it's not just a home run drought, man. Yeah. It's he's locked in. The double yesterday, 2 outs, 0-1 count, game on the line, rips one back up the middle to tie the game and continue it. These are the guys that are stepping up now, and it's what you and I were kind of not waiting for because it was always nice to see the Brandon Marshes of the world and the Bryson Stotts and Taijuan Walker stepping up and carrying this team for a bit. But that this team is only going to go as far as these stars take them. So to have these guys in this series right after the All-Star break, right after losing 3 of 4, step up the way they did was the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me. And then just, again, when we talk playoff atmosphere and the way that ballpark felt, it was very clutch baseball, man. It was intense. It was clutch of them to bounce back after Friday night and win the next 3. It was clutch in which they won the next 3. Obviously, yesterday they're down 3-0. The first game they're down 3-0 on Saturday. The Saturday night game they're down 1-0. They're down 2-1. Excuse me. So to claw back in all 3 of those matchups was huge.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. Harper and Schwarber, I mean, they came up clutch. They're the leaders of the team. They're the leaders of the clubhouse. And, they came through when the Phillies ultimately needed them. I think your point about Schwarber, man, you pointed out that he homered in 3 games in a row. He had the 2 for 5 night on Saturday where he had the home run as well as the 8th inning RBI that ultimately wins you the game. Then yesterday, obviously, had the pop fly that ultimately wins them the game as well. Just coming up big, right? And, he's a guy whose name has been in a lot of people's mouths for the wrong reasons, right? And there's been a lot of complaints about his place in the lineup, the fact that he's in the lineup every day. It's something that I see constantly on Twitter, around social media in general. And it just feels like he continues to answer the call. Like, obviously, the batting average isn't going to go up much, right?
No,
Like
it's never.
it's going to be who he is for the most part. But the home runs, the power, the clutch moments, the big moments where you need a big bat, he's going to be there. And I think he's shown that time and time again, even throughout last postseason. And I think we should just, throw a little bit more faith back into Kyle Schwarber and his big bat and what he's able to do. I get it. It's not appealing on a 100
No, it's not appealing to the eye
basis, right?
No.
Like on a one, I heard it said best over the weekend, this Phillies team in general, they're not built for a 162 game season. They're built for postseason baseball. That's where they come up big, is in October, where you could shrink that pitching staff, that rotation. You can shrink the batting rotation, and you have nothing but big moments, clutch moments in the playoffs. That's where these big bats come up big when you're talking about Kyle Schwarber and the likes of Bryce Harper. So just thinking from that standpoint, we're just getting these guys revved up. We're trying to stay in place for the playoffs and get these guys in line to have a big October. And they're starting off, the middle of July, end of July, on the right foot. Harper, you mentioned it, just coming out of the All-Star break. I think giving him some time to, get his mind right, get himself correct after coming back from the injury. And he's looked great as well, right? He looks aggressive. He looks confident, looks back to himself at the plate. And it's exciting to think about. And then the other thing I'll throw back to you here is Bryson Stott, man. There was a lot of talk about him over the weekend. He's just pure contact. He's just a contact guy. Obviously, he homered yesterday, I think it was, the day before.
He did yesterday,
Is he an everyday guy? Like, he has to be an everyday lineup guy, right?
Absolutely.
Even though he's still getting subbed out for the lefties. He's got to be an everyday guy.
Someone tweeted this out. It actually might have been Jack Fritz. And while I don't think it's on the same level as these two,
I know where you're going.
I think he has a point. He said that Bryson Stott's leap this season should be talked about in the same breath as Jalen Hurts and Tyrese Maxey's second-year leap. Now, it's interesting because even to me, it doesn't seem to be on those two levels.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the game of baseball where it's played almost every damn day, it's played 162 games in the regular season, there's so much more opportunity to watch a dry spell from him or a little bit of a slump compared to Jalen Hurts playing once a week and Tyrese Maxey, playing every other night, every 3 nights. So it's hard to compare and kind of think about what that leap looks like. But man, he's just so calm. He's so steady. He's so mature for as young as he is. And I think that's the way you talk about Jalen Hurts, right? I think in a way, Tyrese Maxey still has some moments where that motor seems a little too high and he goes 100 miles an hour at the rim and you're like, whoa, kid, like slow down. But you talk about Tyrese Maxey as this mature young player. It's the same thing with Bryson Stott, man. I mean, the kid's hitting almost 290. Arguably could have been an all-star this year if it was based on other things outside of fan voting, right? He's just as cool as they come, and the power steadily coming. The gloves been phenomenal in the field. There's no complaints on the Bryson Stott front. And the thing that I think I've enjoyed the most about him is he's answered the call no matter where Rob Thompson has put him in the lineup.
Yeah, that's a great point.
He's hit 8th or 9th. He's hit leadoff for a while, and a lot of people think he should continue to hit leadoff. He's hit yesterday, I believe he was in the 5 hole. He has hit basically 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 throughout this season. And he has seemed to stay as calm and steady and cool and collected as humanly possible. And just been, like I said, I know I can't continue to use the word calm, but that calming presence in the middle of this lineup, man, even when Kyle Schwarber is hitting $180 and the power's not coming, even when Bryce Harper's hurt, even when JT Realmuto's in a slump, the second-year player calms his team down.
He's there. It is. It's actually crazy, and he's actually up over 300 batting average now after yesterday. Yeah, man, he's calm, cool, and collected, and I think that's the biggest thing. He's one of the clutch bats. Something I wanted to throw to you, though, the one, if you wanted to point out a negative, I guess, of the weekend, probably Nick Castellanos, right? His performance of the weekend. something that stuck out to me, and obviously there was a big moment in the game yesterday. They went into extra innings. He had a chance to end it. And something that Mark Henry tweeted out stuck out to me.
I saw this too.
You saw this too? Yeah. Mark Henry tweeted out that even as good as Nick Castellanos has been this season, obviously an all-star player for the Phillies, he still does not trust him in those big moments, when he has a chance to win a game or come up big for the Phillies. How do you feel about that? Is that still kind of where you're at with Nicky? Because, we get so hyped for Castellanos. We want him to do as good as he can, and he's been great this year. Obviously, this weekend's not going to change that.
Right.
But is that kind of where you're at with Nick Castellanos?
It's weird, man. Kind of. I kind of agree. Again, he pinch hit yesterday, so it's tough to come off the bench and be in a rhythm, right? I kind of there's two ways to look at it. A, why are you swinging at the first pitch? Or B, I get to being aggressive if you see something over the plate, whatever. But he comes out, he swings at the first pitch. It hits off the mound. Who knows if it doesn't hit off the mound? He hit it hard. Maybe it doesn't bounce right to the shortstop is in inning-ending double play. But
I'm killer.
It is funny because as great as he's been, and he's been spectacular, and as many big RBIs as he's hit, if you go back to those games in May and April and June, it's like Nicky was always the one coming up in like the bottom of the second with 2 outs, or bottom of the first with 2 outs and 2 runners on, and boom, he pops a single for an RBI single, and it's like, oh, here, like, thank God for Nick. But if that at bat's in the bottom of the 9th or the bottom of the 8th, there's something about it where you're just like, man, he's swinging at something bad here.
Yeah.
So no, I love what Nick Castellanos has done this season, but there is some truth to Mark Henry Jr.'s tweet there about there's something about him coming up in like that bottom of the 10th or bottom of the 9th, and knowing that
it's like he just gets too amped up. Like you hear his walkout music, and you're like, man, this moment's like lining up.
You want him to do it. You want that validation for this season for him, and that's like the one missing piece is that clutch hit. It's that clutch play, right? Yeah. And I don't know, but it is funny though, because as bad as he even was last year, how many clutch sliding grabs did he have out in right field?
He did,
right?
man.
So
that's true.
At least he's clutch in one fashion, which is somehow in the field. I don't know. But
he has time too, man. He's learning from the best.
No, absolutely. Maybe it'll come in the postseason this year. But no, I think your other point about Schwarber is spot on too, because it's a very difficult conversation to have with our fellow Phillies fan base, man, because it's one of those things where like you're just never going to see eye to eye with that person. That person's never going to agree with you, and you're never going to agree with them because, like you said, it's not appealing to the eye.
Yeah,
it's not pretty. It's not your typical lineup. He's not your typical leadoff hitter.
Yeah,
but to me, you just can't argue the numbers.
Yeah.
And the numbers tell you, and again, shout out to Jack Fritz. I believe I could be a game or two off, but I believe the numbers are now 26-11 this season since Kyle Schwarber has been back in the leadoff spot since the month of June. So they're 15 games over 500 this year with him in the leadoff spot. And in the first year with him leading off all year, they went to the World Series and were 2 wins away from winning a World Series. You can't argue with winning numbers. The other numbers you can't argue with are the simple fact of the power versus the contact and the average.
Yeah.
Wherever you put Kyle Schwarber, 1, 4, 5, 6, 8, wherever the hell you want him, that average is never going to climb. He's never going to hit 230 this year. He might not even reach 200 this year. The bottom line is, and yes, he's earned it this weekend, he deserves the most at-bats on this team because, like it or not, and struggle with the fact that he doesn't put the ball in play all that often, and he almost has as many singles as he does home runs on the freaking season. I cannot stress this enough. Those power numbers do not come in the 5 hole because it's less at-bats and it's less pitches.
Yeah.
It's common sense to me. If you're complaining about the dude struggling to hit the baseball, how do you think it's going to look when he sees less at-bats and pitches throughout the course of a game and a season? The average is going to stay low, and the home run numbers are going to decline. So, yeah, you might not love it that a bunch of them are solo home runs, but your logic of, well, if you put them in the 5-hole, those could be 3-run home runs. He only leads off once a game. So there's so many more opportunities, a la Saturday night when Scotty's there, when there's 2 runners on board, and he blasts a 3-run home run to take the lead.
Yep.
He's
exactly why they do it.
They win with him in that spot. And again, yesterday, Scotty, the broadcast was talking about it. How many guys in this day and age, freaking, I don't even know how to, Rougned Odor comes up for the Padres, and with 2 strikes and 1 out and a runner on second, he tries to get that launch angle up and basically hit a 2-run shot. He strikes out. So many guys want to go for the kill. They want to go for that exciting play. Well, Kyle Schwarber, who I think knows he can put one out at any moment, Scotty, what does he do in the bottom of the 12th yesterday with 1 out and a runner on third?
Pops it up the left field.
Shortens the swing and just wants to put the ball in play.
Yep.
The smart baseball play. The leader in the clubhouse. Now, maybe if he's not in that spot and someone else, Trey Turner is, or someone else is up in that spot because Kyle Schwarber's hitting 6th for you. Excuse me. Maybe they're trying to end the game in that moment. Maybe not, but I'm just saying. He makes the smart baseball plays. The power numbers come with that spot, and they win with him in that spot. I don't know why there's so much pushback on it, man.
Yeah, I think the last part right there is the main point, is winning. If they were losing games, if the record was negative with him in the leadoff spot, then we could sit here and complain.
Or if his power wasn't there.
Blue. Like, if the power wasn't there, but he's leading the team in home runs, and it's not even close. He's leading by 12 home runs. Next best guy is Nick Castellanos at 13. So, like, these are the things we're looking at. And the other point is just it's Kyle Schwarber. Like, it's the leader of the team. Like this is the leader of the clubhouse. Like, we gotta instill some faith into him, especially while we're making this run at trying to make the playoffs, man. So just more or less to bring up that point, let's drive some positivity. Let's keep the positivity flowing around the team because they deserve it right now, man. They are playing really good baseball to start the All-Star break, or the after All-Star break.
Second half.
And they got the Brewers next, man. Let's keep riding this. Let's not turn on them. Let's keep riding it. And,
there's people out there that would like to trade Kyle Schwarber, but wouldn't let Alec Boehm go out the door, and it's just it's laughable to me. But one last positive, man.
Yes, sir.
Over this weekend is that I love the way that the bats stepped up in those big moments, because the pitching staff was average, right? Like no one was shut down, but no one was bad. Zach Wheeler didn't have a great day, but Zach Wheeler only gave up 3 earned in 7 innings pitched, right? Ranger didn't have a great day, but Ranger gave up 3 earned in 6 innings pitched. But the bats were able to bounce back. Taijuan Walker didn't. I forget what Taijuan Walker gave up. What did he give up? 2 runs? He pitched Saturday night for you, right?
Yeah, Saturday night.
Yeah. So I believe he gave up 2
He had 5 innings.
2 earned, I believe, if my memory serves me correct. So they weren't lights out, and they gave up leads early, but the bats bounced back. And then, I mean, my God, Scotty, Craig Kimbrell continues to be phenomenal.
Yeah,
Matt Strom continues to be good, right? But Jeff Hoffman on a Sunday afternoon, oh my goodness. Jeff, let me repeat this name. Jeff
Not a
Hoffman.
Name I thought we would be repeating on here, but yes, incredible.
If you read that name to me 2 months ago, I would have guessed that he was a NASCAR driver, okay? I have no idea where this dude has come from, but he comes out and gives you 2 scoreless extra inning baseball. Ghost runner starting on second, both innings. And Jeff freaking Hoffman's the one to come in and shut the door on the Padres back-to-back innings. Even when the Phillies, like I said, with that Castellanos ground, he gets out of the first one, and I'm like, you have to end it here. Like, this has to be it. And they come out and they bunt, and who was it? Was it Mar? I forget. Stott gets thrown out at third by Gary Sanchez on his ass somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're going to screw this inning up. Oh, well, Alec Boehm singles up the middle, pinch hitting, first and second, one out. Here you go. Well, then inning-ending double play, right? He does it again. And then Kyle Schwarber's able to deliver. So, Jeff, I could not go another minute without thanking and bringing up Jeff Hoffman, man.
Have to shout him out, man. Have to shout him out because you don't win that game without Jeff Hoffman.
You don't.
And look, that's what this bullpen has been doing all season. They've just been finding ways to win, finding ways to give their bats opportunities. And to your point, the pitching wasn't great over the weekend. Ranger wasn't great. Walker wasn't great. Wheeler definitely wasn't great.
Right. They were
good enough, though. You know,
even.
Yeah, exactly. Good enough to give your bats a chance, and that's all you can ask for with the lineup like the Phillies have. So, yeah, man, it's exciting. It's interesting. What coming out of this weekend, though? Obviously, we're approaching the trade deadline. It's not right here, but as you look at this Phillies team, what appeals to you more after a weekend like this? A bigger bat or a better arm? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, again,
shouldn't change your perception on an entire season, of course.
No. Because again, it all comes down to what is the difference level between the arm and the bat, right? If you're sitting here and you're going to talk to me about, Dylan Carlson out in left field versus a pitcher, well, then I could see where whatever. But
I keep hearing Dylan Cease's name, man. I really do keep hearing that name.
I love it. Love it.
Don't know if the White Sox are going to be willing, but I mean, that would be a dream, I feel like.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions they could go. I'm interested to see what Dombrowski does because from the reports that I've been reading, from Buster Olney to Eduardo Perez to all these guys, it sounds like they're the team to watch, man.
Yeah.
They've come out and basically stated at the All-Star break, like Philly is the team to keep that eye on in the second half and at the deadline. Yeah. And Dombrowski's going to be aggressive. Getting that taste of a World Series last year and being so close to bringing one home in year one, you have to imagine that he's going to look at this roster and say, okay, what really gets me there? And if that's a couple pieces like a corner outfielder, because Bryce could be going to first base this Milwaukee series, as they stated. You get that corner outfielder. Maybe you get another reliever, another arm. That's all great. Or you go star hunting and you bring in an MVP caliber type of hitter and player, and you try to just take this lineup to another stratosphere. Like, that's my thing, man. Like, I'm cool with whatever. I'm not disappointed in any way, whether they go out and get a couple fill the margin type of guys or go out and spend big. Because, dude, if you go out and get a guy, again, we talked about Arenado on Friday's show. You go out and get him, there's no one that can touch this lineup.
Yeah.
Like nobody. So that would be the difference. That's the appealing part to me, right? Is that he would just take an already great lineup to another level.
Yeah.
But we'll see, man. So they're off tonight.
It's crazy to me, man, just the state that the Phillies are in. You look at some of the other teams in the city, like the Sixers, right, where there's not players begging to come to the Sixers. But the Phillies, you have guys like Juan Soto linked to the Phillies. You have guys like Shohei Ohtani linked to the Phillies.
Somehow.
That's a pipe dream, I know. But like, it's that you're talking about the biggest stars in baseball. You've already gotten Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos, down the line, and you still have more stars that are kind of, I don't want to say pleading or begging, but I mean, they're linked to the Phillies.
There's an appeal, right? Absolutely.
And it makes sense. It does make sense when you think about October baseball in Philadelphia. So it's fun. It's a fun situation to be in, I would say.
Yeah. It's also fun to be 9 games over 500.
Yeah. Winning baseball games.
It's also fun to be in a race where from the first wild card to the third is all separated by half a game to a game difference right now. So this stretch is going to be fun, man. So we'll see what the Phils can do. They're off tonight. Then they take on the Milwaukee Brewers for a 3-game stand. We'll see if Bryce Harper at first base, hopefully. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll see if Dave Dombrowski decides to dial anything up. But speaking of big names and speaking of talent, the other team we wanted to talk about today, and this is just kind of off the script kind of topic for us, because Scotty was texting me last night about it, and we're like, you know what? Let's discuss it. So if you're watching live with us now, feel free to drop your comments and drop your thoughts on this segment. For the Eagles, basically, are our expectations for this upcoming season reasonable? And I'm not bringing up this conversation to act like we're overvaluing what the Eagles can be. Like we are being unreasonable. I'm just begging the question, is all this noise fair to them? We know how difficult it is to get back to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We know that they went 14-3. Is that record reasonable? They were the 1 seed in the NFC. Is that reasonable? There hasn't been a repeat division winner since what? 02, 03, 04, whenever the hell it was.
It's been a long ass time. Yeah.
Is that reasonable with us knowing this division's history? But you just look at the makeup of this team and you can't see past anything less. You look at the makeup of the rest of the conference and you can't see anything less. The NFC's bad, dude.
Yeah.
Bad. You're talking Philly. Well, Dallas can be in the conversation.
Yeah. San Fran.
And San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's as far as I'll take this conversation with true contenders in the NFC.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting, man, because you think about them last season, and they have a much tougher schedule this season as well. On top of that, went 14-3 last year, won the NFC East, number 1 seed in the NFC, home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Right, run through the first 2 rounds,
So I mean, I guess where that comes from is like, if we don't get to 14-3 next season, is that a failure of a season, or is it more based on winning the division, right? And I think that's something that we have to kind of put into scope here. But the one thing that jumps out to me about last season that kind of scares me a little bit, and not to the point where I'm going to sit here and be down on the Eagles or something like that. This isn't a conversation for that. I don't believe. It's more or less just thinking about what could go wrong, I guess you could say. And injuries. We just didn't have many injuries to key positions last year. Now, mind you, Lane Johnson did miss some time. Jalen Hurts even missed some time towards the end of the season. But the positions that I'm thinking of when it comes to injuries that didn't take place, and knock on wood, man, was wide receiver and cornerback. And you think about the duo. We have two of the best duos in the NFL when it comes to those 2 positions, and AJ and Smitty and Slay and Bradbury. And not one of those guys went down last year. And knock on wood, once again, I have to knock on it as many times as I can, because you don't wish it at all. But if one of those guys were to go down, you have Quez Watkins stepping into wide receiver 2, right? Like, these are the things that scare me about the team, because did they just get lucky last year with the streak of health, with the the schedule, whatever the case may be, and then to the point where Jalen Hurts did have an MVP season? Is there a room for regression there? Like, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, obviously.
No, I get. They're just questions, right? They're just observations,
They're questions that are fair, I would believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Because normally, people say injuries tend to even themselves out, tend to average themselves out. So when you look at you did have injuries last year, like you said, Hurts went down, Lane missed time, Goddard missed a decent amount of time. There were injuries to your defense. CJ Gardner-Johnson was leading the league in interceptions. He goes down. So they did miss guys.
Just felt like they did. So maybe that's the point. Yeah.
Right. But to your point, those guys you're looking at that just somehow played, 17, 20 games
Yeah.
Just straight through, pretty healthy. It is something to keep an eye on. But again, that's so far out of our control. I just try not to put
worry
that
about
into
that.
the equation of expectations and what this team can do. When I look at expectations, I try to keep my mind positive, and I try to keep it just on what I know and what I can see on paper, and that is this roster. And right now they are healthy. No one's out for the year.
Yeah.
No one's expecting to miss week 1, right? So again, knock on wood, we are good right now. The Jalen Hurts thing, it's a fair question, right? Do we think he's regret? No, not at
No.
all. But you can say to yourself, he took that leap. Maybe not regressing. There's probably people out there that expect more of an incline. And I'm not saying that won't happen. But I'd be okay if he just stayed here for this season. You know what I mean? Like
I've
there's
seen
probably people out there that are like, oh, well, he went from here to here. Now he can get from here to here this season.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or maybe he was an MVP caliber quarterback last year, and he just stays right on that MVP caliber kind of line with all of the skill around him on both sides of the ball. And I am completely okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting part of the conversation because he had 35 touchdowns last year total between rushing and passing. And it's like, well, what do you want him to do necessarily better? Pass for more touchdowns?
Right.
You know what I mean? Would that make his resume look better to people? It would to the casuals, I would say, if he had more passing touchdowns, more passing yards, less rushing yards, less rushing touchdowns, but it doesn't speak to the quality of player. It doesn't speak to that MVP caliber, right? So I think that's that's one way that you can look at Jalen Hurts is like, do they try to take stress off of his body, right? Like, do they try to run him less? But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you saw this quote from Sirianni as well. I believe he said something like, well, he got his contract now. We're not going to stop. He got his contract now. We're not going to stop using him in the run game now. Like,
I think I know.
Like that, where they're not going to go away from using his legs. So, in that case, I mean, if they're going to let him be free, which I think you do have to let him do to an extent. You can't restrict him. I think he could have another incline in a sense, but it just won't be the incline that people want, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, again, but it's the casuals because they'll try to compare quarterback stats, right? And they only show the passing yards and the passing touchdowns, and they'll be like, well, what? He threw 24, 25 passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
Or touchdowns last year. No. He had 35. You just don't want to count 10 or 11. Right?
It's always funny when that conversation arises. Let me ask you this, Dylan. Let me ask you this. When you look at the big guys, the big names that have left the team, right? And you think about, if you want to call them holes, right? TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, Javon Hargrave, CJ Gardner-Johnson, right, on the defense. Which of those holes would you consider filled the best? I'll go ahead and answer. Defensive tackle, probably you're covered, right? You have Jordan Davis, you have Jalen Carter. But when you look at the linebacker and the safety spots, where are you feeling more comfortable with that defense?
It's funny because I almost went sneaky on you and brought up the Isaac Seumalo departure because I think they have that on their wraps as well with the Tyler Steen pick, with having Juergens and all these guys already there. I think that's filled well as well. Obviously, defense Jalen Carter. I mean, that's just you're talking about potentially a better player, right? It's hard to tell, it's hard to judge. But when you're talking about Javon Hargrave, another year older, outside of last year's 10 sack year, he was never that kind of defensive tackle, kind of pass rusher. He was 5 sacks, 6 sacks in that realm. So you're talking about potentially a more dominant player at that position. We'll see if it starts from day one or not. But
you're looking at what?
You have to go with linebacker, right? And they haven't done
Kobe Dean.
Right. They haven't done much to fill it. They brought in the Kid Morrow from Chicago, who's a depth piece, a kind of like a special teams kind of guy. But I'm looking at the 3rd-year pick from last year, and I'm saying he should have played last year. They just had so much talent in that room and veteran leadership that could fill the role then. I think Nakobe Dean steps up in a big way. Because when you look at safety, man, again, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a clown, but he's still a premier safety back there. Led the league or tied for the league lead in interceptions last year for us. He was a dog for us. And you talk about what? Listen, and I like the Terrell Edmonds pickup.
Yeah.
He's not C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
Hell, some people don't even know if he's a starting safety.
Yeah. Some people have penciled him in as a linebacker. So, right. I mean,
you talk about Reed Blankenship.
Played well last year.
I'm not as sold as a lot of people are on Reed Blankenship.
Yeah.
Hope I'm wrong. Not as sold. I mean, and not just C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You lost Marcus Epps, who outdid my expectations last season as well. So I think safety's still their weakest hole defensively. So I'll say that they filled linebacker better just because I'm expecting Nakobe.
They had a replacement.
I agree, D-Rev. I feel a little bit more confident in the linebacker group.
And the pedigree, right?
You can technically throw Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick in that linebacker room technically by position.
That's fair.
So
I do think Nolan Smith will play a little bit of like traditional outside linebacker. I think they'll try. Just because he's so athletic, and they do need help there.
Right. And then when Howie trades for Budda Baker, I'll switch my answer. But until that happens,
we're all waiting on,
I gotta go with linebacker. But
Sidney Brown, he's the rookie safety.
Yeah.
Sidney Brown.
Some people think Keely Ringo looks like he could play a little bit of safety as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, dude. But man, I'm looking at my expectations for this year, Scotty. And again, to come back to full circle to are they reasonable? I have to say yes, because I believe in this team this much. Dude, let me tell you something. I love this Phillies team. And I think the Phillies have a good chance of making another deep postseason run. But I have never in my lifetime been more confident coming into a season about a team in this city than I am the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. Again, I cannot reiterate enough how difficult it is to get back to that level, to win 14 games, to win a conference, to win a division in a division that hasn't repeated for almost 2 decades, to get back to, again, all of it.
Yeah.
They're just that talented.
Yeah.
I can't ignore it. Throw the injury conversation to the side.
Yeah.
I cannot ignore how talented this roster is. Everyone, again, the casuals, was barking about how not bad the Eagles were going to be, but how much an effect the losses, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, were going to be to this team, how detrimental losing these guys were going to be. They're better, Scotty. They're a more talented football team right now than they were when they played in the Super Bowl. You don't have as long as we know right now, again, knock on wood, you don't have a jackass coordinating your defense anymore. So I look at my expectations. My expectations are to get back to a Super Bowl. Now, let me repeat that.
Yeah.
My expectations are to compete for a Super Bowl. That does not mean they have to go 14-3 with this schedule and be the number 1 seed or whatever. I do expect them to win the division. I just think they are by far the best team in the division, the best head coach, the best quarterback, the deepest. I think they should win their division and repeat and do something that hasn't been done for a while. But that doesn't mean, let's just say, I don't know how with that quarterback play, but let's just say San Fran wins 14 games.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's reasonable that the Eagles should win 15. My expectations are to compete for a Super Bowl. So if you're the 2 or 3 seed in the NFC, but you get back to the Super Bowl, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point to end on, because that's honestly where I was going to start my point. It's not that they have to come out and get, 14 wins against a stacked, schedule. But I think 13, 12 wins in this schedule is more impressive than even last season in itself, right?
Oh, 100%.
Look at the quality of the schedule. And then to your point, once you get into the playoffs, I'll take us against any team in the NFC. That it's as simple as that.
It's a bad conference, man.
When you get to the AFC, we can talk about the Bills, the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, obviously. Down the line, they have contenders over there in the AFC. But you look here in the NFC, it's highly dependent on what? Brock Purdy? Like, it's highly dependent on Brock Purdy or Trey Lance becoming a quarterback, a nonstop starting quarterback, right? And then you look at Dallas, it's sure they've done some things this off. They just always shoot themselves in the foot, man. Yep. And it's inevitable, I guess you would say, with the Dallas Cowboys. So sure, I think they'll give us a run for our money in the division, as they always do. They'll win games in the regular season. But I still think the Eagles are the better team overall. I think when it comes down to Jalen Hurts, that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, when you look across the NFC.
Yeah, I had this conversation last week.
You can go, through each position group for the Eagles, and we can start with the offense, but the Eagles have the best offensive line in the NFL. So, boom, the best offensive line, the best defensive line in the NFL, right? So, boom, trenches are covered. Then you get to the outside, and you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They have they have a top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL. They have a top 5 cornerback duo in the NFL.
Top 5 tight end.
Top 5 tight end. So you're covered on the outside. You're covered in the skill positions. You could argue, and I don't even think it's an argument, the running back situation is better. Mm-hmm. It's more versatile. You have more contrasting talents when you have Rashad Penny, who is this bruiser in between the tackles, can still break it off. Swift, obviously the passing phenom, the pass catching running back, and then Gainwell once again can do a little bit of everything, right? So then you look across the board, okay, the 49ers could match you probably on all the points that I just named, right? Their offensive line's pretty good. Their defensive line's phenomenal. Great. They got good wide receivers.
Kittle, Ayuk, McCaffrey. Oh, yeah, we get it.
Yeah. So they covered themselves, CMC in the backfield. Brock Purdy. Like, that's the difference. Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy. You go to the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, this, that. Kirk Cousins or Jalen Hurts. You go to the Cowboys.
One more piece.
Dak Prescott or Jalen Hurts, right? And that's where it comes down to. And this, I'm so confident in Jalen Hurts when he's healthy that he's going to make the right decisions. But yeah, go ahead.
So they had the best quarterback in the conference. But I'll go a step further as well. And I'm ready to say this.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan or Nick Sirianni? Mike McCarthy or Nick Sirianni? They have the better head coach as well.
And Nick Sirianni's going to get better this year.
Yeah.
It's his 3rd season. Went to the Super Bowl in his 2nd season. Beat Kyle Shanahan in his 2nd season, right? Outperformed Mike McCarthy in his 2nd season.
Right.
Obviously, there's room for
I think, dude, I'm being serious.
Right?
I don't think that gets talked about enough.
Yeah.
We go back to that Tampa Bay game in year 1. And rightfully so, all the focus is on Jalen and how bad Jalen was and how bad he got beat up and the way he was able to take that and bounce back. But no one talks about Nick's playoff debut.
Yeah.
And all the lumps and bruises he took in that game. And now he got his ass beat in that game. And we're just screaming at the television to try to just get Devontae Smith the ball. The announcers are wondering why he's not a part of the game plan. No one talks about Nick taking that ass whooping as well.
Yeah.
And then you see the way he coached last year.
Bounces back.
He was just a different guy, man. Like, yeah, a lot of the offensive success and change from year 1 to year 2, obviously has to do with Jalen's progression and has to do with bringing in a guy like A.J. Brown. I understand that. But Nick Sirianni was a different man last year too, dude.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, you talk about Nick Sirianni taking a step up. Brian Johnson, right? He's a new OC, has a ton of connections with Jalen Hurts from Florida, obviously, quarterback coach from there. Quarterback coach last year, gets promoted to offensive coordinator. There's part of me that believes that he can also unlock another part of Jalen Hurts, just having that relationship. Shane Steichen, I'm not taking nothing away from him. He was great, obviously, last year. It was one of the best offenses we've ever had. but I think it can be better. There were moments throughout the season last year where we're saying, like, run the football, right? Against the Colts. Run the goddamn football.
Against the Bears.
They have one of the best passing defenses in the NFL. Run the goddamn football. Against the Chicago Bears, right? You end up getting Jalen Hurts injured
and then
by running him.
To throw.
Maybe that's a learning lesson, right?
Yep.
Like,
I agree.
There's still ways that, and I think to your point, there's still ways while there's some things that could regress, right? Maybe Jason Kelce just isn't all pro anymore. And I don't think that's the case, but maybe that's the case, right? Or maybe Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are really starting to show that decline. You still have upside in other areas where Hassan Reddick can get better. Josh Sweat can get better. Nolan Smith can be great. Jalen Carter can be great, right? There's other ways that this Eagles team can improve. Even in the wide receiver 3 position, like Quez Watkins can't get worse than what he was last season.
Olamide Zaccheaus could be a nice addition. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, man. It's interesting to think about because now, as we started this conversation about our expectations being reasonable or unreasonable for the 2023 Eagles, and now I'm starting to like raise them. As we talk through this situation, I'm starting to raise my expectations because they're that good, man. And they just have this culture. I think it's like you spoke to it about, between the Phillies about to win the championship or the Eagles, who has the better chance. And, the Phillies have built the right culture here. They have the talent. The Eagles culture is just a little bit more thorough. It's a little bit more trusted.
Scotty, I'm being serious, dude. I agree with everything. I just can't get over the simple fact of how goddamn talented they are.
Yeah.
They are the most. The Phillies are loaded. We know all the money they spent, all the bats
kept
went out.
Slay and Bradbury. Like they did do that. They kept both of them. Everybody thought we were going to lose both.
Deep.
They kept both.
They're so deep. It's unbelievable. And then the draft, like that draft couldn't have gone any better. And I know he took 100 different Georgia players. They were all the best,
all best players in this.
I can't to go out and get DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. Like you're just better in every avenue than you were last year. So I look at how dynamic this offense was last year, and I say, okay, great. But now add Zaccheaus in the slot and add Penny or add Swift for the RPO action instead of Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott. Now imagine what this offense is looking like.
But you still have Gainwell and Boston Scott too.
Right? You still have them. It's just
still have them.
They wouldn't be playing as much if it was up to me.
Yeah.
And then you get to the defensive side and you look at this pass rush from last year and you look at the record-breaking numbers and blah, blah, blah. And you add in arguably the most talented player in the draft at number 9. And then you add in a pass rusher who you thought you could get at 10 at 30. And now a third-round stud from last year who was mocked to you at 20 is a starter for you. And Kelly Ringo and Greedy Williams are 3, 4, and 5 corners. And there's just so much. Dude, Terrell Edmonds, like I said, I brought him up earlier. Terrell Edmonds is a fine safety in my opinion. They're so deep and talented and stacked. It's again, I could. That's why I'm saying it's so crazy to have these expectations, but I'm being so serious. Anything other than an NFC Championship performance is a disappointment. Like not just because you would decline from last year, you already would by not getting the Super Bowl, but you add in the talent plus the weak conference, and that's what gets me. You brought up the quarterbacks, man. Like. It's the conversation I had last week with people. Like, you got Jalen, right, who we consider in this, like, A or B tier. So, like, it's Mahomes, and then it's probably, like, Burrow, Jalen, and Josh Allen in a group together, and then you go down to another tier, whatever. Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, an aging Matthew Stafford,
Daniel Jones,
Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, the disaster that the Cardinals and the Falcons are. I mean, I'm being serious, dude. Like, oh, another team, and obviously we'll get to it on Turf Talk. But you do have Derek Carr and the Saints. We can talk about that at another point in time.
Yeah.
But again, Derek Carr isn't that tier of quarterback, right? So Derek Carr, it's just not close.
Like if Derek Carr is deciding games for the Saints, then I'll take the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm at with that.
Right. Derek Carr is a very nice top.
He's a good quarterback.
14 quarterback in the league. You know what I mean? Top 15 quarterback in the league. But yeah, man, I think our expectations are reasonable.
Did you see Kelly Ringo working out with Buda Baker?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just because he's not done. Like a move is coming in August. Yeah. He does it every year.
Might not be Buda, but it'll be something of value.
It's something.
Yeah.
It's something to help this team post training camp, end of preseason. Most cuts are being made. Let's examine this roster and where can I make a difference for this team? And he's going to identify it and then he's going to attack it. He does it every season. 2 years ago with Steven Nelson.
Yep.
Last year with CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's going to do something, whether that's a star like Buda Baker or whether it's marginally better at linebacker or safety, whatever it is, he's going to do something to help this team.
Do you know where I think the Eagles are going to be better than they were last year, this season? Where? In the defensive run game. As we started talking through that, you brought up the Hargrave situation, and Hargrave, great player, but a weakness, right, in the run game. That's the simple truth about Hargrave. He's a smaller defensive tackle. He gets bodied in the run game, creates these massive holes. And you saw the Chiefs kind of eat us up with Isaiah Pacheco in the Super Bowl, right? Like he was able to get chunks at a time. I think that all gets shored up this season. You know, between Jordan Davis getting a full season, he's in his second year. Jalen Carter is just the full package at defensive tackle. And I think Nakobe Dean, while TJ Edwards was great, Kaiser White was good. I think Nakobe Dean has this instinctual greatness to him, if that makes sense. And I think he's going to be IQ, show right? that in a starting manner, man. I think he's going to make a difference this year. So to your point, I think that's one area where the Eagles could ultimately get better. There's not a lot of areas they could get better. I mean, they had the number one passing defense. They had the number one rushing offense. They had a top 5 passing offense, top 5 scoring offense. Like there's not a lot of areas where they can just get better. They can get more efficient. They can get better on the rushing defense. But man, it's exciting. And this was just more of a kickoff, right, to getting us ready for the Eagles season, because we're ready to talk about the Birds, man. It's eating us up inside. Obviously, the Phils are giving us some action. The Sixers are dismal right now. But the Birds, man, that's where the excitement really is.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to get into Turf Talk. Hopefully start this week, man.
Yes, sir. So guys, that is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the Phaithful Phanatics Show. We'll be back here live with you on Wednesday at 8:15 a.m. on the DSM Facebook, Twitter, and new YouTube channel. So make sure you go over and subscribe to the DSM-Media Philadelphia YouTube channel. It's where we'll be live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, and it is the new home for our DSM pregame lives for the Phillies, Sixers, and Eagles season. For myself, for Scotty, for our friends over at Manscaped, have a great rest of your